was a good turnout, I think.
I thought there would have been more.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I really thought there would have been more. There were maybe, 15, 20, something like that.
Which isn't bad, but.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April Mayor's Update. My guest today is making a repeat performance. Jared Elbert, our Park and Rec Director, was here in March, and he's going to be, or February actually, and he'll be talking about the emerald ash borer later in the update. So, at any rate, it's been a very, very busy month for elected officials and city staff as well. But before we get into all of that, I want to make a couple of public information items with regard to things that are going on in May throughout the community. There's a lot of things going on in Spencer throughout May, but a couple of things of note. Number one, the Historic Preservation Commission is sponsoring their annual May lecture series. And all of these lectures will be held in the City Council chambers at 6 o'clock, and there are 5 of them. And I just want to run through those because these sound extremely interesting. I think most people will find at least one of them that they might want to attend, and perhaps all 5. At 6 o'clock on Tuesday, May 3rd, Adam Coates, the pro out at the country club, will be giving the history of the Spencer Golf and Country Club. And I think he may also be talking a little bit about the history of the Northwest Amateur, which is one of the longest running amateur golf tournaments in the state. Thursday, May 5th, is Adam Van Gorp and Angela McCauley will be talking about the history of the Tangney Hotel. Thursday, May 12th, Julie Schmidt will be talking about the Spencer Fire. And Julie wrote a book about the Spencer Fire here a few years ago, and that should be extremely interesting to Spencer residents. Tuesday, May 17th, Kirby Schmidt is going to be talking about Sanborn maps. And Sanborn maps were, Kirby will know a lot more about this than I do, but they were the maps put out by the Sanborn Insurance Company, I believe, with regard to insurance rates, and give us a very, very good view of cities from a historic basis back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. And then on Thursday, May 19th, Jeremy Parsons, the executive director of the Clay County Fair, will be talking about the history of the Clay County Fair. So all of those sound very interesting, and hopefully we'll have good attendance at all of those. Then on Saturday, May 14th, Spencer Main Street is sponsoring Downtown Downstairs. And it starts off with a breakfast at the Masonic Lodge. Tickets are $20. It's a fundraiser. And the businesses that will be highlighted this year, and I know they've usually had the upstairs tours, these are going to be downstairs tours of some buildings on Grand. And the buildings that they're going to be touring this year are Hanson's, Game State, Grand Bridal, Hen House, and Prest. So if you have an opportunity, please take advantage of those. Okay, now to what's gone on in April and a few things that are coming up in May. First of all, the Committee of the Whole met with Brian Weave, our finance director, to talk about debt and what kinds of debt. And Brian gave a very, very good presentation to the committee with regard to the types of debt that cities can incur and how much debt we can incur, what we can use it for, and so forth. And also where the city of Spencer stands in relation to other communities with regard to our debt capacity and how much, again, we can incur. So we are constitutionally limited by the state with how much debt we can incur, and that is 5% of our total valuation. So our total valuation in the city of Spencer, for example, is $920 million. And so 5% of that is roughly $46 million. Our current debt is $6.5 million that we have in outstanding projects. That is about 15% of capacity. So we can incur up to $46 million. We have 6.5 or 15%. Now, we're about, in cities our size, we're about in the middle in terms of where our debt capacity and debt limit is. For instance, and I'll just give you a quick example of our friends to the south, Storm Lake. Our friends in Storm Lake have $26 million in debt, or 66% of their total debt capacity. So if you look at Spencer, you look at Storm Lake, I think you're looking at a couple of extremes. We have a very low carriage of debt, and they have a pretty high debt. So anyway, we had a very robust conversation, I think, among all council members, city staff, and so forth, with regard to what kinds of debt we have on the books right now and where we're going to possibly go. Now, it's basically the general consensus of the council that in the future, what we need to do is we have obviously some capacity to carry more debt. But we're not going to carry more debt just for carrying more debt, but we're going to look at projects on a merit basis. And if it makes sense for the community, whether it's a park project, whether it's an economic development project, whether it's an infrastructure project, whatever project it might be, we're going to look at the merits of those projects before the city would incur more debt. So anyway, very, very good conversation about that, and I think that it's one that we needed to have and probably should have had a while back. Okay, next, the council, city staff had some conversations with the Department of Transportation. We had a committee of the whole meeting with them. We had a council meeting where the DOT made a presentation. And a couple of things. First of all, the speed study that's being done from the South T to Menards, we should be seeing some resolution on that shortly. But the one I think that created the most buzz around town is probably the North Y intersection. And those of us who have been in Spencer for a long time have seen many, many changes to that intersection over the years. And regardless of the changes that have been made, it seems like that is still a very, very dangerous intersection for people to traverse. So the DOT basically wants to change the scope of that intersection. Now, it is not in the DOT's budget to have that done this year or next year. They're looking at 5 to 6 years out. But they wanted to come up to Spencer, talk to the city council, talk to the county board of supervisors, and lay out some possibilities. So they came up with, and showed us at any rate, 4 alternatives. One is what they call an R-cut. Another is an offset T to the south. Another is an offset T intersection to the north. These proposals seemed very confusing for a lot of different reasons. They had their advantages, though, as well. And the one that has created the most buzz around town and that people have contacted me about, whether it's on the phone or whether I'm out in public, is the proposal for a roundabout. Now, they say, and I'm talking about the DOT here, the DOT believes that the roundabout is the safest option. They believe that it would slow traffic down, and it would be an option that we would not have as many serious crashes. It would very much reduce those serious crashes that occur up on that intersection. Now, most people in Northwest Iowa are not familiar with roundabouts and not really comfortable on them when we tend to go to other communities that have them, whether they're in eastern Iowa, whether it's in Minnesota, whether it's in Wisconsin, Illinois, states that do have more roundabouts. So it would require a great deal of education. Now, I want people to know that they did not see stoplights or stop signs as an alternative. They don't think that that is going to make that intersection any safer. But ultimately, we all need to realize as well that this is going to be a DOT decision. So we may be able to offer input, but it is going to be the decision of the Department of Transportation. Okay, moving on. Last month, or this month actually, we had a very good project, and I think it's still a very good project with regard to Fairview School and the tennis courts over at Fairview School. And we put some bids out. This was a cooperative joint venture with Spencer Community Schools that the city is involved in. And we took bids on the project, and unfortunately, we did not get any bids. So we're kind of back to the drawing board, but since I do have the Park and Rec Director here, he may be able to offer a little more insight with regard to that particular project. So Jared, if you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, so it was kind of unfortunate we didn't receive any bids. We've had several different companies take a look at the project, and for whatever reason decided not to bid that project. We're also seeing, an increase in material costs as well as labor costs too. So I think that's been kind of a factor for us too. So we're also waiting on a Wellmark grant as well to hear from that. We should hear from that soon. But kind of our next steps, we're going to get together with our councilman, our park board, as well as get the school together too. And kind of make some decisions on how we want to move forward in regards to the material and the labor costs, as well as do we need to change the scope of the project? Do we keep moving forward with the project as presented? So we'll figure those things out here in the coming weeks. So that's kind of where the status of that project is.
Okay, thanks, Jared. Okay, next, just note about boards and commissions. We have boards and commission terms are coming up June 30th this fiscal year. And there are several members of boards and commissions whose terms will be expiring at that time. We've sent letters out to those people that are serving to see if they want to continue to serve on that particular board or commission. And we've heard back from several of them so far indicating that they would like to serve again, and I think that's great. And we've heard from a couple that won't. So in the next few weeks, I'll be making an announcement with regard to what openings there are on those boards and commissions, and if folks would feel like they want to serve their community on a board or commission, let me know, and I will certainly take that into consideration. And I think that it's a great service that these folks that are on our boards and commissions, regardless of which one it is, whether it's the park board or the golf board or planning and zoning, it doesn't matter. These people are stepping up and volunteering their time to make their community better, and I really respect them for serving on those boards and commissions. Another thing that we did in April was to get some contracts signed with the YMCA with regard to our playground program for kids in the summer and for the aquatic center. The YMCA will be conducting in both of those programs throughout the summer. One thing that upcoming that is going to cause some interest, I think, in the community is the railroad crossing on Grand Avenue is going to be under construction starting on May 16th and will go until the construction dates are May 16th to May 25. So that means that Grand Avenue from 7th Street to 8th Street, so roughly Northwest Bank down to Hy-Vee, will be blocked for those days, about 9 days. Now hopefully we're going to have good weather and they're not going to run longer than that, because then we're going to be running smack dab into the Memorial Day weekend. That's not going to be good. The DOT, again, this is a project with the DOT and the railroad, both. The DOT will be putting out signs for detours, and the local detours are to be decided between the DOT and the railroad. So just a point of awareness here that that railroad crossing is going to be under construction for those 9 days, and it will cause some issues, I think, with regard to traffic throughout town. And I'm sure that the local residents will figure out their own detours on Grand, but just know that that's coming up. And we'll have more information coming out. We'll have press releases to the newspaper, to the radio, and SMU also. So just a point of awareness there. And then we also dealt with sewer and solid waste rates study. Now, about 18 months ago, I believe it was, that Mayor Robinson and the council commissioned a study by a company, FPC, to look at our solid waste and sewer rates. And basically what the goal was is to find out where these rates were and if they were fair and equitable. And basically what we were looking at, and the study tried to show, is we didn't want the small users of our utilities subsidizing the big users, and vice versa, that the big users shouldn't be subsidizing the small users necessarily. So I just want folks to know that that study is going to be looked at the next council meeting on Monday, May 2nd, and there will be a lot more information coming out about those sewer rates. We'll have a presentation made by Brian Weave, our finance director, talking in more detail about that particular study. So anyway, that will be upcoming. And then I have to give a big thanks to everyone who has taken part in the citywide cleanup of parks and public areas. And this was coordinated by Park and Recs. Director Jared had a lot to do with it. City staff coordinated it from City Hall. But then we had tremendous outpouring from the community to get these parks and public areas cleaned up. And I took part in a couple of them, one out at Stolly's, one at North School Park. And it's just amazing. Church groups and school groups and service groups have all stepped forward to make this community cleaner, and I think we're showing the effects of that. So a huge difference, and a big thank you from me for everybody who's participated in that particular program. And then lastly, last night here in City Hall, in the council chambers, we had a program put on by Mike Kintner, I believe, from the Department of Agriculture, who is basically their expert on the emerald ash borer. Mike did a tremendous job with presenting what the signs and symptoms of emerald ash borer are and what the homeowners can do. So basically at this time, and this is why I've asked Jared to come in and make another appearance today, is to go over again what some of those signs and symptoms are, what homeowners can do, and a little bit about what the city is proposing. We haven't finalized our plan yet, but we're in the process of making a plan for how the city is going to combat this little pest that's causing so much havoc throughout not just Spencer, but all of Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, all over the Midwest primarily. So anyway, without further ado, turn it over to Jared.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mike again too. He's with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. He's an entomologist there. He did a great job with that presentation. We have recorded that presentation from last night because we want to be able to get this information out to as many folks as possible within the community. It's really good information. We have a ton of ash trees within Spencer city limits, and so he kind of lays out, what emerald ash borer is, what they look like, what their kind of lifestyle is, but he also goes through, what an ash tree looks like, what to look for if your ash tree doesn't look that healthy. One of those being when the leaves start to get on the trees, you'll start to see that crown probably die back from the top down. If it does have emerald ash borer, is typically a good sign of it. Another thing now, while the leaves are off of it, a potential sign is woodpecker activity. You'll see a lot of bark flecked off of it. You'll see bright white towards the very tops of those trees and working their way down. And you'll see little bore holes in the side of that tree. So now the emerald ash borer actually produces a D-shaped hole, so it looks like the letter D in the tree. They're very tiny, but they're also native borers too. So it's a little bit confusing, so if you have any other questions, take some pictures of that stuff, and you can send it to us or you can send it to Mike at the Iowa Department of Agriculture, and they'll be able to kind of answer some of those questions as well. But we have that information up on YouTube, that presentation last night. We'll have it up on our city website, city Facebook page. And he also brought a lot of different handouts from Iowa State Extension, Iowa DNR, as well as Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship too. So a lot of good information and resources for people to check out, both online and in the local county extension office as well. So those are kind of some of the signs and symptoms, but he also talked about treatments as well. So one of the options is, if you see probably 30% of that canopy from the top down die back, usually not a really healthy tree, not a very good sign, so removal is probably best. But he also talked about different chemical applications that homeowners can do. That information was very good, but this is more of a preemptive. If your tree is still healthy, try to preemptively treat that in your yard. And then, if you have some bigger trees, there's other means to treat that through injections or basal bark sprays, those sort of things, which require professional certified applicators to do that. So we really encourage homeowners to get out there and look at all the information and make sure if they're going to do it themselves on their trees in their private yards, to follow all label directions. If they're going to do some larger trees, definitely get a contractor involved and make sure they're certified to treat those trees at the same time. So that presentation was geared toward trees on private property in your backyard, that sort of stuff. We did have questions on our city response. So we do have a plan put together. We've kind of identified some priority areas. So really busy roadways with trees in the easement in the right-of-way, parks, our cemeteries, and our trail system as well as, and safe routes to schools was another one that we really tried to focus on. Those are going to be our high priority areas. And right now we're going to go through and evaluate the health of those trees on those priority areas. we're talking about a lot of removals, as well as giving the homeowner the option to treat those trees at their cost. So we're really asking the community to work with us and work together on that, because chemical cost for us to treat 2,200 trees is not feasible to do. So we're asking some of those homeowners to give us a hand and help out with that as well. So in those priority areas, we will be producing and sending out a letter that explains those options and gives you phone numbers to ask questions, and we'll keep records of that stuff. This isn't going to be a quick and easy process. So when the ash borer gets here, it takes several years, and we have a lot of trees. So it's a plan that's, starts now, but, really is going to go 6, 7, potentially 10 years down the road. So it's going to be a longer process. We won't do, clear cutting or anything like that. It's going to be a meticulous process, and we have a plan laid out to do that. So,
Yeah, and one thing I would like to mention with regard to that, and Jared kind of inferred this, I believe, is that we don't have necessarily a set time frame at this point.
Right.
But one thing that we have done, and this was, and I know sometimes he doesn't like to take credit for this, but Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Orison urged the council several years ago to start putting money aside, because we knew that the emerald ash borer was coming. It wasn't if it was going to get here, it was when it was going to get here. Now, that said, we don't have enough money put away at this point to take care of 2,200 trees all at one time. We're still going to have to keep budgeting that money, and we will come up with a time frame, and that program will be established. So, but my thanks to Jared and his staff and city staff for all the work that they're doing in coming up with this particular program. And as Jared mentioned, it's going to be a cooperative effort between the citizens and the city to take care of this pest. And unfortunately, it's going to be an expensive venture as well. I'm sure we'd rather be spending money on a lot of other things, but this is one of those things that as a city we have to take care of, and we are responsible to take care of this. So my thanks to Jared. He wears many hats. He's not only our emerald ash borer guy, but he's our tennis court guy, and he's our rocket slide guy, and a swimming pool, and all kinds of things. So he's got a lot on his plate, especially this time of year. So I really thank him for coming in during a very, very busy time of year.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep. So anyway, that wraps it up for this month's Mayor's Update. And just like to remind people to do good and take care. Thank you very much.